Okay, this is RJ Bruno, Dr. RJ Bruno here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about hip replacement. Hip replacements are actually a, um, a surgery that's been done for a long time. Um, Depending on how the person is doing, hip replacements can be a fairly simple operation. As a matter of fact, these days you get your hip replacements and physical therapy sees you, and you're pretty much out the door with your walker. No big deal. Hip replacements are very stable and can be pretty good. Now, there can be a problem if the hip replacement is done because the person is elderly and is falling. Um, Somebody who falls on the ground when they're elderly, you're talking about somebody who is not real stable when they're walking, may not even be walking. If somebody is already using a walker and they fall and hit the ground and break their hip, usually that situation is not so good. As a matter of fact, when somebody is elderly and they fall and break their hip and they have a hip replacement done, uh, the statistics say that 50% of those people within the first year will not survive. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who are in great shape and break their hip or have arthritis of the hips and need a hip replacement. Years ago, when I was doing triathlons as a young man, I was doing the swimming portion, and I saw this man coming in with his walker. And he put the walker at the end of one of the lanes, and then he kind of plopped into the water and then took off. This guy was a pretty good triathlete, obviously. He would swim in the water, and he swam a lot faster than I did, even though he really didn't have use of both of his legs because of the hip problem that he had. Come to find out, this was somebody who was in a triathlon, fell on a bike, broke his hip, and so he was rehabbing from his hip surgery. Um, by the time that I pretty much finished my training, he had already gotten off of the use of the walker, and he actually left the pool before I did, and was walking fairly normally. So he just continued his pool training for a little while so that he could get in shape for the next triathlon. So that's somebody who is athletic, falls, break their hips, and has a hip replacement and does remarkably well. But obviously, if you're 80 years of age and you fall and break your hip, it's not because you did a triathlon. More than likely, it's you fell because you were unsteady on your feet, had a hard time walking, didn't pick your feet up, tripped over a paper clip, and hit the ground. People who are very old and not in great shape, they kind of shuffle when they walk. They don't really pick up their feet. That's the situation with that. Now, again, if you're in good health, you develop some arthritis of your hips, and you need to have a hip replacement, not a big problem. They can fix it for somebody who's relatively young. Let's just say you developed arthritis in your hip because of playing football, and they had to replace it when you're 40 years of age. You're going to do fine. Or let's just say, again, you're an athlete who has a bad fall, but you're still an athlete when you finish up with the hip surgery. So it's pretty easy for you to rehab that hip. Um, um, uh, So these are kind of the different situations you can have with hip replacements. It just depends on how fit and how good in shape your muscles are before the surgery, how well you do after the surgery. Okay, take care then, and we'll see how things go then. Bye.